Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning at the Design for Care State of Affairs event. My name is Associate Professor Helena Nguyen, and this is Associate Professor Anya Johnson, and we have the great pleasure of being your MCs this morning. First, I'd like to acknowledge the land that we're on today, which is the land of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I'm just curious, does anyone here know what Gadigal refers to? No takers? So I learnt that Gadi is a native tree. It's a grass plant, a grass tree, and Gul is people. So it's the land of the people that lived where the grass plants or grass trees grew. And these grass plants or trees, which is neither tree or grass actually, they tend to grow in groups, and they have a really deep root system that looks a bit like grass, but importantly it actually connects to other grass plants. And very much like what we're doing today in terms of connecting as a community to learn and to share our knowledge, our experience and our expertise. I think we owe it to be more informed about the traditions and the custodians of the land that we're on, and I'd like to acknowledge that the land was never ceded, and that I pay my deepest respect to elders, past, present and emerging. So today, Anya, we have a really exciting program for you, but before we launch into it, just bear with us. We do need to do a bit of housekeeping. The first thing is that the emergency exit, safety is very important. There are two emergency exits on the right hand and, the right hand and the left hand. Like, yeah, Anya, you do the aeroplane thing for me. And they lead down to the stairs. Go on. No, that's enough, Anya. And we have the restrooms. So there's one outside just in the corridor, which is the men's, and just around the corner is the women's. Photography, let me just go through the next scene. Sorry so much. I got so excited I forgot my slides. So where are we? Yes, in terms of staying with safety, in terms of evacuation, we do have wardens that are just walking this level 17 at the moment. There's two of them. We just have to follow their instructions, if anything. And in terms of today's event, we're really hoping that you can share your experience while you're here. Please feel free to use the hashtag Design for Care. And if you've not yet following our LinkedIn Design for Care, please do. With part of our growing our community and staying connected with each other. So I just want to, before I pass on to Anya, to introduce our first speaker today, I just want to say that it is really, truly wonderful that we're gathering here today as a community, all joined by a shared purpose to create better, healthier and safer workplaces for the people who care for the most vulnerable in our community. So really excited, and hope you're excited too. Feel free to keep eating as we go along and fuel yourself up for the day. Anya, over to you to give our introduction to our first speaker today.
Thank you, Helena. And just, I might just mention, it is very warm in the room.
Sorry, safety.
Yes. So if you're having a hot flush, it's not you. It is the environment. So please feel free to take your jackets off and relax. We're not trying to create a tropical paradise, but that may be what it feels like. So we do acknowledge that, and we are trying to work on just reducing the temperature. I think we got a bit excited because it got a bit cold outside. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today the Honourable Sophie Kotsis. Sophie is the Minister for Work, Health and Safety, and I'll mention that first, but also the Minister for Industrial Relations. And Sophie is the MP for Canterbury. She was born in that electorate. She did all her schooling in that electorate, and also then went further afield to Macquarie for university and then UTS. And I regret that you weren't at the University of Sydney, but, you know. Yeah. So Sophie was elected in 2010, and in the shadow cabinet, she had a very strong interest in healthcare and also in ageing, two very relevant topics, and was involved actually and was a key person in the inquiry into elder abuse. So Sophie's had a very long history in this area and a very deep interest and commitment, I think, to some of the most vulnerable people in our society. And thank you, Sophie, for bringing that to government, and thank you for the work that you're doing, particularly in mental health, in ageing, in industrial relations, which is critical in terms of the infrastructure in this industry, but importantly, your desire to really create sustainable workplaces where people can thrive. So please join me in welcoming the Honourable Sophie Cotsets.
Thank you, Associate Professor. Thank you. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respects to elders past and present. And thank you very much for inviting me, and it's an honour to be with you today. I'd like to firstly acknowledge, of course, Professor Sharon Parker. Thank you for the work that you have done alongside Associate Professors Anya Johnson and Helena Nguyen, and also to the project's participants that have been involved. We're here to support the Design for Care project and learn more about this groundbreaking research from Curtin and Sydney universities. And as you're all aware, that this has been funded by iCare, and I'd like to also acknowledge our acting CEO, Mary Marnie, who's here today, and and also we have a number of people from SafeWork New South Wales, other agencies, the unions, industry, and all of you who are here, because this is a very important issue for you, but also for myself, and I'm taking a very important interest in this area, and I'll let you know why. As Associate Professor Johnson said, that I am the Minister responsible for both industrial relations and work health and safety, and it's the first time in a very long time, in a decade, that we have a minister that is responsible for work health and safety. And there's always a purpose for things, but the way that I want to work within the government and with all of you is in a coordinated and an integrated way. And we have to start from the beginning to get to that end, and we have to work at both ends. In the last census in 2021, that told us that 4 million Australians reported having a mental health disorder in the year prior. According to ABS, in our workforce, around 1 in 5 people are dealing with illnesses like anxiety and depression. And all these figures may seem overwhelming, but the message they send is very clear. Now, mental health is one of a number, and it's probably one of the top 3 in terms of workplace challenges now and going forward. We are seeing psychological workers' compensation claims increase around the globe, and the pressure on employers and workers is rising. Most worryingly, we know our workers in the healthcare, aged care and disability care industries are among the most impacted. The healthcare and social assistance sector is the largest industry in New South Wales, and in 2022 there were over 17,500 claims in this sector. To date, these claims have cost over $203 million, with an estimated potential cost of over $370 million. So, in fact, the work today, the Design for Care research, shows that over the 9 years to 2021, the New South Wales healthcare and social assistance industry lost more than 170,000 working weeks to psychological industry. And that's huge numbers. There's an issue, and it absolutely needs fixing, and the government is part of the search for solutions, which is why supporting the Design for Care project is so critically important. Research is telling us that prevention and early intervention delivered by employers, industry to employees is the only way to help reduce the pressure on the frontline workers who give so much to care for our community. Rather than being burnt out and stressed, we want workers to feel empowered, to feel positive and to feel productive. An increasing body of evidence from Design for Care has already demonstrated that among healthcare and aged care workers, poor work design is a common factor behind rising anxiety, burnout and depression. Our healthcare sector workers have supported our communities right across Australia throughout COVID-19 and going forward, and now they deserve our support. Addressing the risk factors contributing to psychological injury claims will also help industry in many ways and the sector. The early adopters of smart work design are saying it improves recruitment and retention of a highly motivated and engaged workforce, and this can help solve the operational problems many employers face. I do look forward to learning more about the work that the researchers are letting us know this morning. And on behalf of the New South Wales Government, I would like to thank Smart Design for Care team and the industry organisations who are leading the way by trialling smart work design solutions and undertaking this very important collaboration. I just wanted to just go off script and let you know that a few weeks ago I was up in the Hunter, up in Newcastle, with one of the leading disability providers, and I was there with the Safe Work team. One of the things that we were doing, and some of the team are here today, and what we were doing is talking to the provider who is working alongside Safe Work, but how to improve design and how to assist people with disability, but also how to make their environment a better environment. Now, as you all know, the sectors that you all come from and represent, it's not just turning up at the office and switching on the computer. It's not like that. The work is varied. It's you're going to people's homes, you're meeting and you're dealing with many challenging and complex community members that need the support, because for us it's about getting people out there working and living to their very best potential. I know that there are issues with respect to recruitment, to retention. We have a very an aged population in the aged care sector. What was fascinating for me when I was up in the Hunter was the number of young people in the disability sector. So this particular provider that I attended, they've got over 400 employees across the state. And what I found was the number of young people. So we want to be able to retain young people. We want to hear what they've got to say in both the way they work, but also it's about keeping these people in the sector. So we do have a long way to go, and I'm very looking forward to hearing more about this collaboration. But this is going to form part of our work as the new government as we go forward. You know, it's not going to be easy, particularly from my other end in terms of claims management and how we work through together in terms of returning people back to work. But starting from the beginning, how can we take on our professors' work in terms of the work design? How do we get there from the beginning to help people in terms of their work? So there is a long way to go. I'm not going to put down the golden path, but I'm here to listen. I'm also here to work with all of you and seek your feedback. But this is an important piece of work. It's important for us as a government to be informed going forward. And as I said earlier, that the issue for us is at the beginning, but also at the end. And we do have a lot of work. So thanks very much. It's great to be here and fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you very much for the important work that you do and for your support. I'd like to introduce you now to Professor Sharon Parker, who is our lead chief investigator for the Design for Care project. Sharon is a world, if you don't already know, she's a world-leading researcher on the topic of work design, as well as the topics of proactivity at work, mental health, and job performance. She is the director of the Centre for Transformative Work Design at Curtin University, and a John Curtin Distinguished Professor in Organisation Behaviour at Curtin, and an Australian Research Council Laureate Fellow, which is one of the most prestigious fellowships in Australia. Internationally, Sharon has been recognised as one of the world's most influential scientists and social scientists, according to citation counts from the World of Science group, and also named on the world's top 2% scientists list by Stanford University. So, not yet, Sharon. I'm still going. No, I'm kidding. But Sharon, you have inspired a whole generation of scholars in the field of mental health and work design. Personally, and on behalf of Anya and I, personally, professionally, Sharon has been a very long-term mentor of Anya and I for almost 18 years now, actually over 18 years. We are just absolutely delighted, Sharon, that you brought us along on this journey with you, and that we've continued to be part of the journey with you as part of our Design for Care team, and we'll acknowledge all the amazing work the team has been doing. But now, Sharon, you can come over. Thank you, Sharon.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you for those very kind words. I especially would love to welcome Honourable Sophie Kotsis, the Minister for Work, Health and Safety and Industrial Relations. Thank you so much for coming today and for your very compelling words. Thank you also to Mary Maney, CEO of iCare, all of our other esteemed visitors, there are many here today, and our valued partners and our valued colleagues. I also would like to acknowledge the Gadigal people on whose land we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. Today I represent our team. I won't tell you who all of them are, but we have a wonderful team of researchers from Curtin University, from the University of Sydney, and also actually Monash University are part of our team. So what I would like to do is tell you a little bit about the Design for Care project, some of our latest findings. So I think most of you know what the project's about, but in a nutshell, Design for Care is about designing better work so that the people who deliver care can thrive in their work. Ultimately, we are hoping to reduce those workers' compensation claims that are associated with psychological injury. But fundamentally, what we are doing is hoping to create work that is meaningful, challenging, interesting, healthy, productive, that delivers high-quality care. That's the fundamental goal. We want to evaluate what we do to check that it actually makes a difference. And then, if it does, we want, of course, to share those learnings as broadly and widely as we can. So we're just going to begin, though, with a very quick who is in the room so that you can see who else is here. So I'd like to invite you to grab your phone and the instructions will pop up. And I would like you to just indicate which particular slice of the sector that you come from today. Irene, do I click forward? Oh, yeah, okay. All right, let's see. It will pop up, right? Irene is the technical expert behind this. Oh, it's happening, great. So who have we got? We've got quite a lot of others so far, that's interesting. We have lots from iCare, aged care, disability care, only one out of home care. I'm tempted to ask who that is, but I won't embarrass you. I'm very intrigued who the other people are, how you define yourselves. We're going to have to unpack that a little bit later. So this is who is in the room today. But let me tell you a little bit about who is in the room, I guess, in terms of the surveys that we've been conducting. So we are really excited to be on this journey with 5 partner organisations, and later you're going to meet some of the leaders of our partner organisations. And in those organisations, we've surveyed more than 1,369 people have participated in our survey. And I'm just going to share with you some of the high-level findings from that research today. So what you can see there is that most of the people in the sample are from the aged care sector, but we also have quite a large number from the disability care sector and a small slice from the out-of-home. 84% of the people are female. That sort of reflects the industry, so that's no surprise. The mean age is about 44 years. The average working hours per week is pretty huge at 52 plus hours. And most of the participants in the survey are client-facing. Again, that's what you would expect given the composition of the group. 41% are permanent part-time, so quite a large number of part-time people. And you can see from that figure on the left of the educational profile of the people that it's fairly spread. In fact, it's quite an educated sample. So the 372 there are people with a bachelor's degree. You can see from the tenure statistics there that there's really quite a broad range of tenure as well. So what I first want to begin with is something that you already know, actually, and the Honourable Sophie Cotts has just actually reminded us of this, which is that we already know that mental health and wellbeing are significant issues in the sector. So last year in November, we had our first State of Affairs event, and some of you who came along to that event will remember Professor Alex Colley presented his analysis of workers' compensation claims as a result of psychological injury at work. And he presented data on that in this sector using iCare data. Some of the things that he found is that the number of psychological injury claims in this sector is about double that of other sectors. It is growing. People who have psychological injury rather than other injuries are off work for much longer. So on average, they are off work for 13 weeks. Whereas with other injuries, it's 2 weeks, so a huge difference there. And most of those psychological injury claims are either bullying, harassment, or job pressure, which covers a multitude of sins that we will see a little bit later. The figure that really struck me in that presentation, and I know it struck several of us because this is a sector facing really critical staffing shortages, was the figure that the Honourable Sophie Cotts has already reminded us, that more than 170,000 weeks of time were lost in that 9-year period in this sector in New South Wales because of time off work due to psychological claims, injuries at work. That's more than 3,500 years of work time. So we know already this is a challenge, and our data supports this. So in our sample, 1 in 5 people have high levels of work-related burnout. And we measure burnout primarily through measuring if people feel emotionally exhausted. And so people are feeling emotionally exhausted in this sector, at least 20% of them. 1 in 6 are feeling disengaged, and 1 out of 12 are considering leaving their organisation in the next 12 months. It was interesting, Honourable Sophie Cotts, that you mentioned the youth, the younger people. In our sample, the younger people are the most burnt out and disengaged in the sample. So that is a particular concern, I believe. There's lots of demographic differences. I'm not going to go through all of them because that will take my whole time. I want to turn now to the first of the 5 take-home messages that we have. And the first take-home message is we want to understand some of the important contributing factors to those mental health statistics that I've just shared. We have to look at work design. So first of all, we did this fancy analysis. Doesn't look very fancy. We've simplified it. A fancy analysis called latent profile analysis, and it basically identifies, are there sort of groups of people in the population who have similar sorts of work design. And we identified that there are sort of 3 groups of people, and they're pretty straightforward. They're the sort of low, medium and high group there. I'm going to explain that purple line first. So the purple line is the 15% of people who actually have really quite poor work design in this sector. So if we start over there on the left and we use the SMART model of work design, which is a model that we've been using in lots of different sectors, first of all, they are scoring low on stimulating. So they are not feeling that their work is meaningful, varied, interesting, challenging. Second, you can see their scores are low on mastery. And what we mean by that is that they do not really know what they're meant to be doing, what their core priorities are. They're not necessarily getting feedback on how they are performing. So they're really unclear. And that sort of stops them from mastering their work. Agency is also low. Agency is about autonomy, control, influence. R, for relational, is really about the fundamental importance of connection. And today is a day of connection. So we all understand the importance of community, contact with other people, support from other people. And this group is quite low on that as well. And then we see T, I always call T the big one. T is about having demands at work that are tolerable. So the idea is here that all work has demands. That's sort of what work is. But work needs to feel tolerable and manageable. And you can see that the level of tolerability is again lower in this group. So that's the worst work design group in the sample. There's also a sort of what I call okay work design group, that's that middle group. And there is about 15% of participants in the sample who have really positive work design, and you can see that indicated there in the figure. But the most important point I want you to take away from this is that work design influences people's mental health and well-being, and that provides us a point of leverage to make the situation better. So what you can see here is that if we turn again to look at that 15% that have got the poorest work design, you can see that in that group, 1 in 2 have got high burnout. So that's every second person. And you can see that 1 in 2 is disengaged. So for people whose work design is not smart, there are mental health consequences. And just conversely, you can see the top 15% of people that have really got positive work design, only 1 in 10 is experiencing that high emotional exhaustion, and only 1 in 20 is disengaged. And those figures are actually better than norms. So hopefully that makes very clear this association between work design and mental health and well-being. Just to get a couple of statistics, the permanent contract people have less tolerable demands. So I think this is because the casual people on casual contracts sometimes don't know everything and they can't do things, and so the people who are permanent sort of have to pick up sometimes extra load and duties. So that's something important to remember, that these are the people who may need particular attention. We also see that there are differences for client-facing. Again, you'd expect this, and you can see that for the clients, the people who are working directly with clients, agency is lower, relational is lower, and the burnout is higher. Again, you see this association. So that's the first take-home message, which is that one way we can really understand poor mental health and well-being is to look underneath the iceberg I always talk about, to say what is the work design of people. The second take-home message is, well, which of the many sort of elements of work design that exist, which are the most important ones? And I'm going to actually get you to jot down at least a couple. What do you think are some of the key work design factors, or you might be more familiar with thinking about them as psychosocial risks or psychosocial hazards. Same thing, just different way of labelling these elements. What do you think are the key ones in the sector? So, I gave you a bit of a clue before when I said what most of the psychological injury claims are about, which was bullying and job pressure. And actually, from the look of this, is really what you are also saying as well. Workload, bullying, time pressure, a whole bunch of things there. Violence. Let me show you what our data suggest now. So these were the top 5, and the way that we ascertained these was to look at how much strong, not the frequency, not how much these exist, but the strength of their impact on mental health and well-being. So that's how we assessed this. Number 1 is lack of tolerable time pressure. I think we all know this. People do not have enough time to look after people in the ways that they would like. Lack of tolerable emotional demands. This is a demanding type of work because there are anxious families to deal with, there are people who are unwell, there are people who are dying potentially, and these create real significant emotional demands for people. High work-family conflict. So what we're seeing in the data is that people are taking some of these challenges home, and they're also struggling to balance their home commitments with their work commitments and vice versa. We also see low role clarity. In other words, people are not feeling very clear what it is they should be doing. And in particular, I think it's they're not clear what it is they should be prioritising of the many, many things they are expected to do. And then the 5th one, which is really, this is a really important one because it's something that can be acted upon, is that lack of opportunity for development. So if people feel that they're there and they're not developing and growing and getting a chance to learn, that actually really impacts their mental health and well-being. And that's one of the top 5 factors. This is some of the data in the background if anyone needs to see numbers. So the next take-home message that I'd like to articulate is that I've mentioned that the top 3 things are actually about demands: time pressure, emotional demands, and the conflict of work and home. One of the things that research shows, and our research that I'll present in a minute support, is one way to deal with that. Of course, one way to deal with that is to make the demands less. That would be great. If we can do that, we should. Another way to deal with that is to boost the other aspects of the model. So to boost the S, the M, the A and the R in the work. And I'll just share with you a quote of a client-facing worker in an organisation. And this worker says, "In this job, I'm allowed to do what I feel is needed. Yes, I've got policies I need to meet, but I'm also allowed to do what I feel is best for my client." So what's that an example of? That's an example of agency. And what that person is saying, yeah, I've got these things I've got to do. I've got demands, I've got policy, I've got compliance requirements, but I've got agency. And that helps me to deal with those demands. So we see how having the SMAR can help to make the demands more tolerable. I just want to give you a couple of examples of that from the data. So for example, what this figure shows, and I apologise, it's a bit academic, but let me try to unpack it, is what you can see on the left-hand side is the level of mental ill health people experience, and then across the bottom is the time pressure. And the fact that the line goes like that means, as I've just said, the more time pressure people experience, the more mental ill health they experience at work. But what you can see here is if you've got role clarity, then things are much better. So you can see here that this is low role clarity, this blue line. So you can see that as time pressure increases, mental health, really ramps, ill health really ramps up. This line is much flatter if you've got high role clarity. It's probably not even statistically significant. So what that means is that you can actually have more time pressure, but it's not having such impact on your mental ill health because you've got clarity. Or to put it differently, who's got the poorest mental ill health in this sample? The people who've got high time pressure and low role clarity. Recipe for stress. Another example, this is about emotional demands. Remember I said emotional demands is one of the most important stressors in this context. And again, you see, I'll just go straight to that point there. The work-related burnout for these guys is much higher than anyone else. They have high emotional demands, so that's maybe a little bit intrinsic to the job. But they also don't know what they're meant to be doing, what the priorities are. They're not getting the feedback. So they've got that low role clarity, and that is affecting their burnout. And one last one, you're getting the idea of these now, hopefully. This one is about work-family conflict and about the importance of opportunity for development. So what you see here, I'll go straight to the point. These guys, high work-family conflicts, a lot of demand in their work, but they also lack that opportunity for development. So they're probably making sacrifices for their family, compromising, their out-of-work lives, but they haven't even got opportunities for development to sort of offset that. So what I'm really hoping that helps you to understand is that work design is holistic. So we need to look at the whole model, and that can help us create work in which people really thrive. So just to go right back to where I started, that's why we sort of show these profiles as a holistic picture of work design. And what we really want to do is raise people up to be in this category, certainly, because these are the high-risk people, but also we want to even raise these guys up to create smarter work and therefore improve mental health and well-being. So those are some high-level findings. What are we doing about it? Because that's what this project is also about. It's about moving forward with solutions. We have a process that we call the Path to Smart Work. As you can see, I'm someone who likes acronyms, inventing them. And this is the process that we are going through with our 5 collaborating organisations, and you're going to hear some of the leaders of those organisations in a minute reflect on what this process has been like for them. Does that say 5 minutes? Thank you. Excellent. I am going well with time. So how this process works is, first of all, we prepare. That's obvious. We put together a little project team. We make sure that senior management are on board. We make sure that there's good communication about the project, all the usual things that you should do when there is change. The second thing we do, though, is we assess the work design. And you've seen the sort of aggregate findings. I've just shared those with you. But of course, it's really important to do that within each particular context that you're working in, because they're all different. Also, it really gets the buy-in of people because you're showing them that you care about their work design because you're asking them about it. And so you're able to really get that sort of engagement of people happening early. And that's fundamental to our process. So first, find out locally what are the work design issues, and then we have a reflect phase. So take the opportunity to then feed that back to the front line, the leaders, all of the relevant stakeholders, and discuss it and talk about it and begin to start thinking how could these aspects be addressed. That's really important component of this too, because it's not our job as researchers to say what it means. It's the job of the people doing the work to interpret what the findings suggest. And then we move into the redesign phase, and we do this in a collaborative way. So this is not about us coming along and saying you must do X, Y, and Z. It's not about us coming along and saying such and such is doing X, you should copy it. We might say such and such is doing X, might be an idea, but it's not about copying what other people do. It's about finding out what the people who do the work think might be good ways of improving their work design. So it's a highly participatory redesign process. Then, as I said, we need to know, is it actually working? So that's the track component. So we repeat the assessment because we can only be confident that we've improved work design if we remeasure it and show an actual improvement. and hopefully also an improvement in mental health and wellbeing. And then the final phase is habituate, which is really saying, okay, we might have tried it in some pilot areas in the organisation, but what would we need to do to scale it across the whole organisation? Or how would we really embed this to make it sustainable, not dependent on us, for example, but really embed it into the hard wiring of the organisation? So with our 5 partner organisations, we are now up to track in Key Assets, who is the furthest along. That was one of our first partners. And we are in this redesign phase for the remaining organisations. We have signed on a couple of new organisations who now are at that prepare phase. And as Anya will mention later, we are looking for a couple more if anyone is interested. So I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into the project and the journey that we're on. It is a journey, so we'll be having another one of these events and would love to have you back. But at this point, I think I'm handing over to Anya now, who will introduce the panel who are going to share some of their experiences of this process. So thank you all very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
So Sharon will be joining us on the panel, but I'd like now to invite and introduce each of our panel members. As Sharon's mentioned, this is our opportunity to ask the people who've been participating in this project to share some of their insights and also to reflect on what the broader picture looks like. So I'll start with inviting James Isles to come up to the panel. James is from Key Assets, and James is the Director of New South Wales and Norfolk Island, which is very fancy, for Key Assets. And Key Assets is an organisation that provides foster care, family support and also disability services. And James has had 20 years' experience in this area, but also in youth mental health from previous work, both with Headspace and the Benevolent Society. So thank you so much, James, for joining us. As Sharon mentioned, Key Assets was our inaugural partner and was very, very open and willing to share with us. And I think be our guinea pigs, if I can put it that way. So thank you, because every step of the way we've trialled it first in Key Assets, and one of the wonderful things about working with an organisation that's so open and willing to take on new ideas and to explore and work in partnership is that we've been able to really refine what we're doing. So thank you, James. We really appreciate it. Second, I'd like to invite Khan Nelson. So Khan is the Executive General Manager for Research and Positive Ageing at Widden. And Widden is a large not-for-profit organisation providing care to older Australians, mostly in regional, rural and remote parts of New South Wales. In fact, parts of New South Wales that many of our team didn't know existed. So Khan joined Widden after working as a consultant really in strategic management and also in innovation. And I think it's that spirit of innovation that's really been sort of imbued within the Widden culture around finding new models for actually caring for older Australians and providing that really holistic way of looking at person-centred care in the aged care sector. Widden was also a very enthusiastic and inaugural partner, and there have been some really interesting challenges as we've navigated some of the parts of New South Wales, as I mentioned, the team have not come across before, but it's been terrific, and really one of the things that we've been really struck by is just how open and welcoming our rural parts of New South Wales are, and just how community focused they are, and how important it is to them that they retain the community and retain people within community. So it's been an absolute pleasure. And then finally, Amanda Messer. Amanda is the General Manager for People, Quality and Culture at MDS. And MDS is also a not-for-profit or community organisation that focuses on people with disabilities in the Macarthur region. And Amanda is part of the senior leadership team there that's really focused on helping people with disabilities in Western Sydney really live up to their full potential and be able to have full lives and really, yeah. So I really admire the work that you're doing within MDS. And again, MDS has been a delight to work with. We've been able to experience some of the challenges in disability care and working within the NDIS structure. And MDS is in the middle of sort of co-designing some ideas. So thanks. Please join me in welcoming our panel. So we thought we'd start with just some broad questions. And I guess maybe if I can start with you, James, just to give us any reflections on some of the key findings from the report and anything that stood out for you or resonates with you from the out-of-home care sector.
Sure. I guess the biggest takeaway for me was we all know in the out-of-home care sector, child protection work demand is significantly high, but the tolerable demands were significant. And I think when we were doing this project, working with the teams, it was evident, and that was a focus in terms of our action planning as well. So for me, it was the acknowledgement of the tolerable demands being high, but the sense of mastery and agency was also something that they liked about their role as well. So working on some of the positives, but also acknowledging some of the significant demands.
And Khan, any reflections in your area of the industry?
Yes, I mean, it was very interesting seeing what the findings of the survey revealed. Some of it was what we expected and some of it we didn't expect at all. On the sort of positive front, the fact that the work is stimulating came through loud and clear. People find the work very rewarding. They feel it's very significant, that they're making a difference. And that's really important to them. And the other thing that came through on that positive front as well was how important recognition from clients and residents is. And that is, for us, that's, again, something really important to celebrate because we have a strong relationship-based care model. So that was really interesting for us to see. So really strong relational side. And where people had really supportive bosses and managers and where they had really good teamwork, again, that was really important in mitigating the high demands that they're experiencing. On the sort of side, the sort of more negative side, shall we call it, yes, I mean, it confirmed the high demands. And for some people, that is emotional demands. And again, it's sort of the negative side of the relationship-based care approach is we're asking people to bring more of themselves to work. So therefore, they get more emotionally connected, and then that can turn into more emotional demands than you might have normally. So emotional demands were high, physical demands for some staff, but obviously not all, and time pressures for those who were more office-based. So everyone had these very high demands. And then on the mastery and agency, very much in line with the findings, mastery, I think, and this is exacerbated by staff shortages. So what we're seeing is that people are really not able to see tasks all the way through. Their roles are slightly blurred because when you're 30% down on the floor, you have to just go and do whatever you have to do. So that sort of mastery is being eroded. And I think that has a real impact. And also not being able to take up the opportunities for development that are there. But if you haven't got the time and the team is down, you're going to be doing whatever you can. And also on the agency front, that came through loud and clear as well around, particularly for frontline staff, where they have less influence on decision making, and maybe they're not getting consulted around change, because what you're seeing is very busy managers, so we might be communicating to them about change and what things need to happen, but it's not filtering down to frontline staff. So you are seeing quite high levels of people not feeling a bit disengaged, not being consulted and not really feeling in control of what's going on.
Thank you. Thanks, Khan. And Amanda, what about your organisation and your insights from?
Sure. Yeah, very similar to what's just been highlighted. Time pressures. We work predominantly under the NDIS funding, and there's some challenges there in face-to-face supports compared to admin time, and that does put pressure on the staff where to put their time and where to focus. The finishing a task from beginning to end has been a big challenge, so many interruptions throughout the day. So you'll start on one project. Even if you're a support worker, you might be focusing on one client, then you're with another client, then you're with another client. So the team really don't feel they're ever doing the best job that they can, because there's a lot of the chopping and changing from day to day, which impacts on the mastery part of the role.
Terrific. Thank you. And perhaps I'll turn to you, Sharon. And we focus this part of our, we're in the stage of the research where we're really starting to focus on those first three letters, the PAR, the prepare, the assess and the reflect. Do you have any thoughts as to why it's important to do that before we jump into sort of trying to redesign work?
You know, you can only create a good solution if you've got a good diagnosis, and that's sort of what it is. It's a sort of diagnosis where you're really finding out what's going on. Now, the reality is most of you know anyway, but I think what it does is a few things. It gives you a shared language to talk about these things, and you can see how you guys are using the language, and you can use the same language with your frontline people. I think even the assessment of work design is saying to people, we care about your work, because everybody has so much change fatigue and so on in this industry. There's so much being done to them for efficiency and compliance and those goals. This is about their quality of work. And I think the assessment phase is part of saying we want to know what your work is like and we value your input. So I think it has a message also at that level.
We found, as an offset of participating in this, that our staff have engaged more in our employee assistance program, because they feel that we do care about their well-being, and we're pushing it from the top. We're driving that message. So, you know, wellness is a key value, very important. So that has been a great offset of the project.
Allowed to talk about solutions today, so we will go there a little bit. Just to our path partners, can you share with the group here any sort of specific examples of strategies that you've started to trial out, implement, what's worked, what hasn't worked, just to get us going and thinking about redesign strategies and solutions. I might ask James first, since you were our guinea pig, so you can tell us what has not worked, and then we can go to the subset.
I'd want to highlight how important it is in that prepare phase. I think learnings from myself and key assets, where if you don't spend significant time in that initial phase, it does send teams to drag. We also do an engagement survey in key assets, and I guess we try and align the two processes together. What we've learned, the process that we did, we had 4 separate teams, so 3 offices, 3 social work teams, and then a business unit. The process was to kind of interview and take each team and talk to them about what is it there, what they want to see change. We use information from our engagement survey, a lot of the information from the surveys that we did, the interviews, and they started finding out lots of things that they wanted, and we took that back to I took that back to things like the budget, the impact. They wanted increase in social work, senior social work staff, so some succession planning. They wanted workload reduction. They wanted more communication from the senior leadership team. They wanted higher engagement, a lot more self-care. So all these are quite obvious, and you probably think, well, why aren't you doing that already? We are. But it was also an acknowledgement that, okay, we're going to do this. We're going to do this purposeful activity and relate it back to this process, this project. And I think lessons learned is that when we have had successes, so we have been able to increase senior social workers into the teams, we have been able to reduce workload. What we probably need to do better is communicating that and saying, as a result of this project, and your feedback, and I met with you on the 10th of March, your team, and you gave me this feedback. As a result, we've been able to do this. And they can go, oh, we're being listened to. So that's, some really good actions have come out of the project, but we've still got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing James talk actually about that, because I think for us to begin with, some of the challenges were around participation. Because we have such a large organisation, we have lots of frontline workers, and they don't sit in front of computers. And some of them don't even have work email addresses. So trying to get them engaged, and of course the uni team had to work really hard with us to help get as high participation rate as possible, because a lot of it had to be done on paper. Because they weren't going to fill out surveys online, and they weren't going to be doing it in their own time, and so there were lots and lots of challenges, and I think we did pretty well in the end to get 32% participation rate, and that's pretty good for our survey levels internally. And then we've just completed the workshop phases. And so we've only really just heard some of the projects that the workshops have come back with. And actually, similar to what James just said, a lot of it is quick wins, and that we're listening to going, but isn't that happening already? So there's things like, so they were very keen on things that really they felt would really improve mastery. So really beefing up the onboarding and induction phase, which we think we've got sorted.
Just a couple of reflections. One is that I think some of the comments are suggesting that the process of involving people in the change is in itself protective. And those of you who are used to psychosocial risk language, lack of control, lack of change consultation are two of the big psychosocial risks. This process is addressing those risks. But the other comment that really resonates, so wonderful to hear these stories, by the way. It gives my work meaning, actually, I have to say, is that good work design is often, particularly right now, given the situation, motivated through creating healthy, safe work. But good work design should be good for the client, should be good for the organisation. That's what when we run our work design workshops, we talk a lot about. And when you engage the people who do the work themselves in coming up with they are the people who know what needs to be done, because they do the work all day long for hours and hours, 52 hours a week on average. So you get better quality solutions when you engage people as well. So it's protective, it's nice to have, but it's also about getting the best solutions. So it's not an easy process to manage. It would be far easier to forget it and just tell people what should happen. But the magic actually lies in the process. So that would be the point I would like to reiterate, the importance of engaging people in this process.
Yeah, I noticed the report never mentioned pay. Human beings are very adaptable. Doesn't matter how hard the work is, how poor the work is. If they're remunerated, they'll put up with it. Any comments?
Actually, I would dispute your idea that people are okay with crap work if they're paid enough. The levels of burnout in high-paying jobs would sort of question that assumption. I do not want to say that pay is unimportant. It's absolutely critical. It's just not the focus of what we are doing here, partly because that's not within our control as people we're organisational psychologists, we're trying to create better work. We don't have the access to create better pay. That's at a different level to us. So really important. It's just not the focus of what we're doing today. But thank you for the comment.
Work redesign, doesn't matter how perfect it is, can't compensate for poor pay. And as we know, the people in the eye care area are the most lowly paid. And
I actually think the evidence would contradict what you're saying, but...
I don't think so. I've been through all this before. You've got two people working now with 2 or 3 jobs to make men's meet. Do you think they have time and emotional problems and stress problems and family problems? Sure they do, but they know they have to pay the bills.
As I said, pay is really, really important. Yes, it's just not the only thing to focus on. So thanks for the comment.
Thanks very much for the presentation. It was amazing, and I'm really excited to hear about the process that you're going through. So one of the things that I heard consistently across the board was the communication piece and how important that actually is in bringing people along on the journey, making that journey magical, etc. So I was wondering, with your projects, have you, found ways, I'm hearing different organisations, different needs, ways to communicate better with workers, to really engage with them and so they understand that, they've got more control in the process?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I've embarked on a commitment to do a bit of a state director update every week to the whole New South Wales team. We've got about 100 staff, and I've got 10 staff in Norfolk Island, and so it's a one communication, and that talks around national projects, local projects, research, and anything's happening locally. Great feedback so far. Sometimes like, it's another email, but it's actually a concise email as opposed to sending out 10 different ones. And it gives a bit of a flavour on kind of projects that we're doing, updates on things, and any state-based stuff in relation to accreditation, contracts, etc. On top of that, with the 3 offices we've got in New South Wales, I'll visit them at minimum every month. And part of my day being in that office would be having a sit down for an hour and doing a Q&A. Hey, what's happening? And it's pretty wonderful as well. Part of the project, I actually sat in some of the teams and the feedback, and it's really interesting. The team didn't want their direct managers in the room, but they were really happy for the director to be in the room. And I don't know what that is about. I'm still figuring out what that is about. But they were so open and clear, and they actually said, "No, James, we want you in." So we're really taking the feedback, and communication, engagement, self-care is really is high.
I think for us it's been more challenging because we're a bigger organisation. So for us it's more important to make sure that communication, first of all, that we get all of our regional managers absolutely on board, and then filter down to the managers of each site and make sure that they're there talking about the project, encouraging people to participate, sharing of views, making sure that people feel that it's a safe space to talk about their well-being and the challenges. So the project's been a great catalyst for that. But it is. I'm not saying it's easy, but it's really important. It's a really important aspect of the project, because if you don't engage people, and if you don't get them understanding the value of the project, then you're sort of wasting your time.
Can people hear right? Yeah. Look, great data and really interesting study. What intrigued me when I looked at your data, you've got a really long hours workforce, 52 hours a week. That's an average, right? So that means there's lots of people above that. I then looked at the differences between the kind of low, medium and high, and the thing that was least different was work intensification, right? So the really interesting question for me is, what is it about the settings that are giving people agency, right? Is it the work group? Is it the workplace? Or is it the enterprise? Because clearly everyone's working big hours, everyone's pretty stressed out with work intensification, but that agency issue is clearly something that's happening either at work group, workplace or enterprise level, and that seems to be then you've got sites of intervention. Any observations about that?
Great, thank you for the question. And first, let me just tell you that I wrote to Arian, who prepared the data last night, and said, please check that work hours figure, because I'm worried, that it's correct. And he has checked it and assured me it is correct. But I guess your question is, how do you create the agency or the support, the relational, the stimulating, bearing in mind that the hours, it is intense work, it's demanding work. And what we talk about in our work design workshops is there are many paths, okay? Let's start from the individual. Individuals themselves can make a difference to their own work design. So, for example, we talk about this concept of crafting. Individuals can, let's say they're bored with their work, they can go and ask for more project opportunities, or they can create more stimulating work. The team leader makes a difference. If you've got a very authoritarian, traditional, old-style manager who believes that they should not trust their workers and they should that's going to make a difference to agency, as an example. We go up to the organisation, the number of levels of hierarchy, the extent to which work needs to be tightly standardised. These other, the flexible working policies, so there's organisational factors. And then we can go right up to the many national or state level policies that have a direct impact on the work design, you know, such as various compliance requirements. They have a direct impact on the levels of agency of staff, as an example. So the idea is that there's all of these things can influence the work design, the level of agency. And what we try to do in our workshops is find what is within the sphere of control of the people that are involved in the process. If we've got directors involved, we can go up a little bit higher, but sometimes it's more local. So it's always about recognising there's multiple paths, trying to find the paths that can actually be enacted upon, and ultimately you get the most success if you tackle all those paths, actually. And that's the holy grail of really good work design. So thank you for the question. That's a great one.
I'd like to make an observation on that, because what we were surprised about was that our community care services, so there are staff that are going out into people's homes and working in people's homes. We had sort of assumed that maybe that's quite an isolating role, and that there might be other types of pressures and stresses that we might see through community care. But in fact, that although they have high work demands, they were actually the best off. They had most agency because they're going into that. They decide what's happening in partnership with the client. They've got agency. They're well supported, very well supported by their managers. So they've got mastery and very clear definition of what their role is and being able to finish one task to another. So that particular work setting is actually great. Whereas the residential aged care, that's where you see the lack of control, the real impact of staff shortages. So that was really fascinating for us.
So again, just highlighting that design is holistic. You need to look at it all because they work together. And that was a beautiful example of that. Thank you.
And I think we have a question here.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. Sharon, I was really interested in the recognition of role clarity, which we know is one of the key psychosocial risk factors, but your point that it's more around the prioritisation or the reprioritisation, and I'm certainly seeing that in our work. Do you have any comments around that, particularly in regard to what is the role, I guess, of the employee or the team to be able to speak up about that versus the role of the leader to be able to monitor that? So that sort of ratio, or perhaps even tips from the panel as to how you've managed that.
I guess what you're highlighting is, and just to go back to the earlier point that we can look at work design at these multiple levels, one of the things we want to encourage our staff to do is to voice their concerns. And, you know, a lot of talk about psychological safety, which is just fundamentally not feeling safe to voice. But if we're cultivating that relational environment that people feel safe to speak out, it's like a sort of, extra stopgap. So yes, you want the leader to be noticing, you want the leader to be thinking about role clarity, but leaders are half the time also exhausted and overworked. So and I say this to my team members all the time, please tell me if you're overloaded, because honestly, I'm probably not going to notice. I really care, but tell me. Again, both is the power. Thank you for the excellent thought.
Hi, Mark from ACPA here. Thank you, panel. That was a great presentation, and it's a really good project by the looks of it. Now, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier, external aged care community, Aged Community Care Providers Association. A lot of external pressures within the sector nowadays because there's such a reform process going through, and it's intense. It's great that Witten's a part of this project, and I think it's fantastic that they've embraced it and are using it across the sector. I look at some of the smaller providers with less resources than Widden, and how they're going to be able to be brought along this journey as well. Because I think it's really important for the sector. But just thinking about that, Widden, great place, fantastic care, very big though, with lots of resources. Some of these smaller places, you know.
Well, this is a challenge in the broader psychosocial risk topic, which is, you know, small businesses. How do we, everyone sort of understands how it might work with these bigger organisations, not saying it always does, but generally people understand how's it going to work with a business of 3 people or a smaller business. And look, honestly, I think all of the same principles apply. So I would just always encourage you to focus on the principle, you know, and that's why I'm saying it's not about the magic solution, it's about the process. So principles of talking to your staff, of asking them to share their concerns, of creating work that is smart or whatever language you want to use. You know, those principles, I think they apply everywhere. Now, that doesn't mean that they're just going to magically do them from, you know, there's going to need to be somehow ways of upskilling leaders and so on in those environments to learn those principles. One of the things we would like to do when this project finishes is disseminate it more broadly, and we are creating all of the learnings that come from these projects into materials, guidance, etc., that hopefully can help into the future. But I'd love to hear your ideas. Do you have some thoughts?
We'll get time.
Yeah. There you go. Solution.
Say that about Widden, but the truth is that when it comes to resources for implementing a project like this, each care home and each community care service is very much its own little business on its own, and there isn't massive support because we can't afford that. So we're very skinny on our sort of central head office type services. So yes, we have to disseminate the information and we have to empower them, which is what we do, but they're on their own. Yeah. They're pretty much out there. They are coming up with those solutions themselves. We've empowered them to do whatever they want. We'll support them if they need it, but it's not like there's like all these resources hanging around in the wings just waiting to come and help. It's not like that.
I know CEOs who do RNs overnight.
If you have to be, yeah.
I also think this is.
Well,
BAU.
our managers are all RNs, so they have to be.
I'd like to comment to that as well. I think this is BAU now. Yeah. I think in our industry, our leaders, we have to go that extra mile. Like retention rates, etc., is really low across the sector, and so I think we have to step up to be able to kind of increase our engagement, increase people's satisfaction at work. And so whatever that takes. So I get a lot of joy from my staff staying beyond 2-3 years. So if they go before that, I go, okay, what's happening? What are we not doing correctly? So it's my impact and my effort that I want to do to ensure that people are enjoying work, they're satisfied, they're learning on the job, etc. They've got the agency autonomy. So I think it's leaders having to step up and going, actually, this is now BAU, and we can't afford to just put it in the box or shove it under the carpet anymore.
All right, we are at time, so please join me in thanking our panel. And, and thank you so much for being such an active and engaged audience, even though we're boiling you. But yes, I mean, one of the reasons for doing these events is to really try to bring you along on the journey that we're going through, and in terms of learning from industry and learning what works, what we can do better. And we want to be able to build a community of people who will be able to help us implement this more broadly. So thank you so much. In front of you, you've got our LinkedIn page for project updates. Please do follow us, and also let us know if this would be a project that would be of interest to your organisation, something that you might like to also participate in. So we'd very much like you to do that. We also have a report. So Sharon provided a sort of an overview of the findings, but we do have a report which we'd love you to connect to. We will be sending this information around to you, but that's how you can access our report. And finally, we'd love a short evaluation. If you could tell us a little bit about whether this is useful, what else you'd suggest, how else you want to connect with us, what else we can be doing. Because this is critical for our industry. If we're going to sustain a strong, caring industry, we absolutely have to invest in people and the people who care. So please do continue to work with us and to follow through with our project. So our next State of Affairs, look out for the email. We'd love you to come along, and we'll give you the next update, hopefully, on what's absolutely working, how things are transitioning into business as usual. And also I'd really like to take this opportunity to firstly thank the team, the Smart Design for Care team. We're a big team of researchers based at the University of Sydney and Curtin University, and it's been a terrific collaboration. So I'd really like to thank them all very much. There is a lot of them here for arranging this event. And also thank iCare, because without the funding and without their insight and foresight to think about, actually, let's really think about prevention. Let's actually try to get some shift in the industry as a whole. Let's not just be working at the end and trying to get people back into work when they've fallen off that cliff. So thank you, Yong, to your team at iCare, and for Mary, who's really been leading this work. And we've really enjoyed working with you. Thank you for your support. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. And please stay, continue to network. We're not pushing you out, but we do want to give you an opportunity to leave if you need to. So thank you.